opportunities that I think there are for you working in this context. And the third is to share my ideas about something that's called community psychology practice, which would be new in Azerbaijan, but which I think could give you the tools for transforming the lives of people with disabilities and their families in a way which would be unique in the region. Okay, so we've done our consultations in formal context, in training context, with organisations for people with disabilities. We've had consultations that have been led by disabled people themselves, and these slides show you some of that. The first story that I want to tell you is the story of Merida. And I'm telling you this story to illustrate the first of two things that I want to cover. This piece of work is really important because it shows you the importance of psychology as a practice in community. Yeah? Now, Merida is 22 years old. Just on the slide, yeah, she's 22 years old. She lives with her mother and father in Baku, and she lives on the 7th floor of a high-rise building. Yeah? Now, the building does have lifts, but when you get to the ground floor, there are 10 steps from the building to the street. Yeah? She has cerebral palsy, so she has more or less full body paralysis. She also has no spoken communication, and she communicates by writing with great difficulty because her mobility of her arms is very limited, but that's how she communicates. So we know that there's a lift in the block, and but then there are these steps. So to get her outside, her mother and father have to carry her down the steps in a wheelchair to the street. To get her back up the steps, they have to wait for a passerby to come or a neighbour to come to help them lift her in the chair up the 10 steps to the building. Yeah. She's 22. She feels like a burden. She doesn't want her mother and father to do this because she feels it's dangerous for them. And on the day that our psychologist went to work with her, which was in 2023, Merida had not been out of the house since the pandemic. So she had not been out of her apartment for 3 years. So this is quite interesting. As a psychologist, you'll be able to think, what are the psychological issues that maybe I should be thinking about for a person with these kinds of disabilities? Her mother does all her personal care. Now, because of Merida's mobility problems, because she has no spoken language, there's no point inviting her to a psychologist clinic or a session, because she can't access your clinic, and in the session, she can't quickly have the kinds of conversations that you might use for assessment and so on. So what we have done is practiced our psychology in community by sending the psychologist to her home to spend time with her. And not just 1 hour, because communication is difficult, but the whole day. And not a day that is structured by the psychologist thinking, I'm the expert and I know what to do here. But a day where all the power is given to Merida to say, what would you like me to know about your experience? And then for the psychologist to use her autonomy in saying what her choices are, to construct some thinking about how you can support her. So Merida actually wanted to go out, desperately wanted to go out. Here you can see the psychologist took her out for the day, and they went shopping and they did lots of things. And Maribel was very happy. She really enjoyed this day of being listened to and spoken to. And in the day, Ashley, our psychologist, learned that most of the time when Maribel is at home, she's alone because her mother goes to work or to shopping, do errands, and her father as well. And so she spends her time alone in this chair because she can't move around the apartment while she's alone all day. And in her words, she said, time almost doesn't pass. Well, for a 22-year-old woman to be telling you that time doesn't pass is a very negative situation. That's a very difficult scenario. As psychologists, we want to do better for people like Saadat. But then, as we learned, she's teaching herself Japanese over the phone. And she's an artist. She also wants to learn about Arabic letters. She says that books are her friend. Here's some of her art that you can see her doing. But mostly, she's alone. So there are all sorts of things for psychologists to think about here. Like, what are the wasted talents of people with disabilities in Azerbaijan who stay in their mother's apartments for the whole of their life? But also, what are the psychological issues for Maribel and her family? Do you think she might be sad sometimes or lonely? Do you think there's a risk of depression? What do you think about aging, for example? Not just as Maribel gets older, but her parents get older. What's going to happen in this scenario in 20 years' time? Yeah? What are the psychological challenges that we're building up by not tackling some of the things that are important in Maribel's life now? So I'll leave you with those questions and tell you one more story. Our other psychologist, Malaha, conducted this piece of work. This time with a married couple, both of whom have physical impairments. Actually, at the time of the interview, they were expecting a baby who's here now. So that's good news. Sorry, I didn't move the slide on. This is Edkin and Ashkin, a married couple in their 30s, and they met and got married at vocational rehabilitation school for people with disabilities. Ashkin, he served in the military and he was injured. Yeah? So his paralysis, his spinal cord injury, comes from his military service, and his wife was injured in a road traffic accident at the age of 8 years old. So they're very interesting as well for purposes of our discussion. At the time of our interview, she was 7 months pregnant and she was trying to make money by doing handicraft activities. But actually, before she's married, she's a Paralympian for your country. She's one of your most celebrated Paralympic athletes, but now she's making her handicrafts and hoping that maybe she can become a tailor. Her husband can't find work, since he has left the military, but neighbour kids' children come into the apartment when they have troubles with their maths homework and helps them with their maths. But apart from this, he feels very unoccupied. And he goes out a lot. He's very adamant that he doesn't want to depend on anyone, so he just goes out, spends the day away from the flat as much as he can. And his wife urges him to stay positive, to stay strong. They hope that he will find work, that they will be able to support their child independently, and so on. And so again, if you think, what are the issues here for psychologists? Well, by going to their home, you can see the dynamic in the family, you can see that there's this struggle with trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, that kind of thing. You know there are challenges coming because here we have a young woman who is about to have a baby in quite difficult circumstances. there are all kinds of attachment and bonding things you might want to think about, and again, personal independence would be an issue that's like